Dear brothers and sisters, the path of the spiritual masters have always been that we need to experience for ourselves. This is not a path of blind faith and someone tells you something and you believe it. It's a question of, do you experience anything or not? It's a question of finding the time, sitting down to meditate and be able to experience the divine power of the Creator within ourselves. And so, as we gather here today, the spiritual path impacts us from many directions. And as the path is followed in different cultures and different ways, questions come up as to how do we implement a path. Many times the examples that we get since the path started in the East are examples that are coming from those cultures, those backgrounds. And so when we live in the West, sometimes it becomes difficult to understand them. As an example, in the East, there is this tradition of touching the feet of the spiritual master. So this tradition is very common in the East. And not only touching the feet of spiritual master, just touching the feet of someone who's elderly is very common. As a child, you learn to touch the feet of your parents, to the feet of your uncles and aunts, and that's a very natural thing. Like when you meet them, you bow down and touch the feet. And so, in the West, if someone sees someone do that, you don't understand what is the purpose of doing that, and they start to feel, oh, I don't understand what this is. So then questions come up. And so when questions come up, it's good to ask the question, because if you don't ask the question, you don't understand why it's done. Because the path is practiced by people around the globe, questions do crop up, and as questions come up, and mostly they're because of cultural understanding, mostly they're because, as we lead our lives, the activities that we're involved in, how they're going to interact with us, how we're going to interact with them, and how do we stay on course so that we can reach our goals very rapidly. So many questions come through all kinds of mail, emails mostly these days, definitely through other mechanisms also. And so we try to address a few of them every time, so that we all get a better understanding of the path and we can fit it into our culture, into our backgrounds. So let us address some of the questions that came in this week.
How does the karmic law work in cases of unpaid debt?
We are held accountable for each one of our actions. Okay. So the law of karma and the astral work as follows. The person who asked for the bill to be paid and did not pay is going to be liable for making that payment in their lifetime or in another lifetime. Because if they got financial help, right? Because they asked for it. It wasn't like someone gave them something out of their own. Then that would be another question to think about. Okay, but they asked for it, and so then they're the ones who created that atmosphere. So they asked for it, then it becomes their responsibility to pay. Okay? So if they're not paying that person, then somewhere in their lifetime something will happen. Either they'll pay someone else, maybe with interest. That's how life is. Or if, let's say, they could not pay or there were no scenes like that in lifetime, then they might have to come back and then take care of that payment before they can finally get off the wheel of transmigration. And in the second case, if we ask someone and say, okay, please pay my bill, and we are not paying them, then we are held accountable. So that the one who starts the interaction is the one who's responsible to take care of it. And so the karma is associated with the person who is starting the interaction, not with the person who's giving the money, let's say. Okay. Because this is the starting, or someone wanted it to be done. So the karmic action happens because of the one who starts that karma. And then it needs to be taken care of sometime in this lifetime or another lifetime.
Does eating food from the langar impact us spiritually?
Food for the langar is blessed by the spiritual master to help us on the spiritual path. Okay. So when we eat from the langar, then there's no karma associated with us because of eating that food. Okay. But help comes to us in many directions which we're unable to understand. See, the food that goes into our body, it affects the physical body and our spiritual being based on what kind of food we put in and how that food was cooked. Okay. So in the langar sevadas are instructed to do Simran as they are cooking. Simran, repeating God's name, have your attention be focused on God. So that as we do Simran, what are we doing? We are invoking God, we are remembering God. The repetition of God's name is then charging into the food which has been cooked. Okay? So that when someone partakes of that food, not only is the physical body nourished by whatever, the vitamins and the nutrients and the proteins and whatever else we get through the food that we eat and the fats. But the spiritual charging in the food is going to help us in our meditative processes. So that when we meditate, it might be easier for us to concentrate. It might be helpful for us to go on the spiritual journey within. So the food that we eat from the langar is spiritually charged. And this is why it helps us in our spiritual journey. But no karma is associated with the food for us. It's not like we've taken something from someone. Now on the spiritual path, the spiritual masters have always encouraged that we who do eat langar, that we should also think about, when we're eating langar, we should think about why is langar being provided. So in the times of Sant Rajinder Singh Maharaj, his mission started in Delhi. So he would ask the people who would come from Delhi not to partake from the langar, that they should bring their own food, and that the langar should be distributed from those who come outside of Delhi. Because he felt that people who are in Delhi, they live very close, they can bring their own food, but someone coming from Punjab, someone coming from another part of the country, someone's coming from another part of the country, that they are the ones who should benefit from that. The reason being that he wanted to make us understand that the mission runs on the help of everyone. Okay? And this is why the people who work in the langar or who are doing seva in the langar, they need to understand that when they cook the food, that much food should be cooked which is going to be used by everyone, so they don't have to throw the food out. And I know it's very difficult to gauge. Here we might have 500 or 1,000 people to eat. In India we have 50,000 or 100,000 people to eat. Okay, so now how do you cook for food? Because you don't know, out of the 50,000, will 49,500 people eat, or will 25,000 people eat? Right? So You have to figure out how to cook, because if you overcook, then generally you would have to throw it out. You can use it for the evening meal, but how else do you do it? So the key is to understand, one, that the people who are doing seva in the langar are very careful about the amounts that they use to cook. The second thing which is very important is, and I think with time people forget this, is that the langar is supposed to be very simple. The food should be simple. It's not like we've gone to a wedding. Okay, so the purpose of having langar is not that you're in a wedding and you have to have 5 different things, or you have to have things which are quote unquote very, very special or something. The purpose of the langar is when someone's come from far away, they have a chance to eat. People who have tons of money can go to any restaurant and eat or do whatever they want, right? But there's a lot of people who come with great difficulties. There are a lot of people who maybe drive a lot. There are many people who take buses just to get there. And so the purpose is that the meals be provided to them so they be physically nourished, and also the spiritual radiation which is going into the meals as it's been cooked is enjoyed by them. Okay? So whether you're rich or poor, you eat in the langar because you want the spiritual radiation too. So the key is to keep the langar very simple. Okay? Based on whatever it is, there's simplicity in the langar is very important. Okay? But when we eat, getting back to the karmic aspect of the langar, anyone who eats the langar, there is no karma associated with them that they have to go and do some seva or something. But it would make sense that if we do eat in the langar, that we either do some seva, whether it's a financial seva, or physical seva or something, so we give back to the environment from which we are taking. The mission runs on the help of everyone, and so people help. And so one hand helps here, another hand helps here, another hand helps here. So then one can take here, one can take here, one can take here. So we all, as we help in the mission, and people who are working in the langar or doing seva in the langar, are also helping, and they're giving their time and their efforts and their energies to be able to make food so that many thousands of people can be nourished and can also get the spiritual gain. So when we eat the langar, there's no karma associated, but I think a sense of responsibility should be there, that we also be able to replenish in one manner or another.
Are soul, attention, and consciousness the same?
The soul is a part of God. Okay? And so God being all conscious and full of love and light, so our soul being a drop of that ocean too, is totally conscious and is totally calm and peaceful and loving. So that's what the soul is. Our attention is the outer expression of our soul. It's like our attention is taking us into the world outside. Okay? So it's an outer expression of our soul that's coming out of us. And our attention then can either be focused on God, or it can be dragged out by our mind into the world outside. So the outer expression of our soul is what is attention. It's not the soul, it's the outer expression of the soul. Now, consciousness is the state of the soul. Our soul could be conscious or could be not conscious. If it's not conscious in the sense like our soul is always conscious, but when it's living under layers of mind, matter, illusion, then it doesn't have the tendency to know itself. Okay? Let's say the sun is there. So the sun is always bright, but if there are many clouds on it, no light is coming out. So consciousness is a state of the soul, where the soul is in a state where it's in an original state, where it's full of the love and light of God, or it's shrouded under layers of mind, matter, and illusion. So those three things, even though they're connected with the soul, are not exactly the same. One is the soul itself, one is the outer expression of the soul, and one is the state of the soul. They're all connected through the soul, but they're just different ways by which the soul interacts with others.
Should we meditate in a state of acceptance or yearning?
Sitting in a state of acceptance or sitting in a state of intense yearning, both of them are good. When we sit to meditate, there needs to be yearning in us, otherwise we won't sit. So yearning to know God, yearning to know ourselves, yearning to be on the spiritual path, yearning to experience the love of God is very important. Because if there's no yearning, then you will never be able to sit, because then you'll be caught up in the activities of the world. So love for God creates yearning for God. So when we have love for God, then we're yearning to know God. Okay? So yearning is very important. If we don't have the yearning, if we don't love God, there won't be yearning for God. And if there's no yearning for God, then why would we even sit to meditate? Okay? So yearning for God is very important when we sit to meditate. Now when we sit to meditate, what is very important is that we don't sit with preconceived notions as to what do we want to experience. We've been given some inclinations of the experiences by the great saints and mystics on the spiritual path, of what kind of experience we might have. And so we might say, oh, I want to see the moon, or I want to see the sun, or I want to see the, red rising sun, because of what we've been told could be experienced. But when we sit to meditate, we don't want to force the issue, because then it's the forcing from the mind that's coming. So we want to sit with acceptance of whatever God sends to us. So if we are not sitting with acceptance, then we will never get the real stuff. True meditation is let God send us an experience that God thinks is good for us. Okay? So that will only happen if there's acceptance in our being. So I think yearning for God and acceptance for the experience are both very, very important as we go on the spiritual path. And both of them are very helpful for us to be able to gain on the spiritual path. Because if we sit with preconceived notions that we want this and we want this and we want that, then we are never going to be able to gain what we truly can gain. Just the saying, not my will, but thy will be done. It's not that what we want we should experience, what God wants us to experience, that's the experience we should have. So when we open ourselves to that state where we open ourselves to experiencing whatever God sends in our direction, then we will be truly, truly gaining the most. Let us meditate for a few minutes. Please sit as comfortably as you can. Close the eyes very gently, just like you close them when you go to sleep. Your eyeball should be straight, focus 8 or 10 inches in front of you. And as you close your eyes, those of you who've been initiated in the mysteries of beyond, please do your Simran. And those of you who are new here, please repeat any name of God that you feel comfortable with. This repetition of God's name should be done mentally and not out loud. I pray to God Almighty to help each and every one of us connect with the divine power within and to experience the divine light of God within ourselves. We'll be sitting for a few minutes in my prayer to the three great spiritual masters of the past century, Hazur Baba Sawan Singh Ji Maharaj, Param Sant Kapal Singh Ji Maharaj, and Dayalpur Sant Darshan Singh Ji Maharaj, to help each and every one of us connect with the divine power within and to experience the divine light in its effulgence. So we'll be sitting for a few minutes. I'll be taking you out of the meditative state, and my best wishes are with each and every one of you. Please leave off. Please leave off.